Hey guys, just got another question from gettingmygrill@AOL.com. It says, from one barbecue lover to another. There's nothing like a great grill on a beautiful day. And don't get me started on the toppings. Ketchup, mayo, pickles, onions, and the occasional tomato. The list goes on. The only problem, I just don't have enough space to doctor up my burger the way I want. Any tips? No problem, amigo. Step 1, grab your favorite condiments. Step 2, grab a muffin tin. Step 3, go to town and fill it up. Boom, baby, and send.
Guys, doesn't it feel like we've been in this meeting for a long time?
Well, how you doing today? I'm Pastor Chris. I'm the West Location pastor. Welcome to Fountain Springs. So great to have you here. Listen, last week, Pastor Steve, our West Location pastor, our prison location pastor, spoke about obedience and shared with us about what it means to walk in obedience with Christ. I think that he did a great job, and that was awesome. Today, we're going to dive into another life hack, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. Listen, it wasn't much more than 15 years ago. This was a really cool moment. Our first child was about to be born, and almost to the day here pretty quick. And I was on staff at a church, and every time we did a staff meeting, we went out of town. And so we got in the car as a staff and drove 20 minutes away and to grab some grub and to have a meeting. And I got a call about halfway through my chicken fried steak. And it was my wife on the line saying, hey, right now is time. And I'm like, what do you mean, right now is time? Now, I need you to be here because it's time to go to the hospital. And I was like, really? I'm in Albert Lea right now. And much to my surprise, the news of me being in Albert Lea was not that impressive to her. And we had a little bit of a conversation about why I wasn't there because it was time. It was important for me to be close. I know, rookie move, right? So, guys, if your wife is about to have a baby, don't leave town. It is important for you to be close because needless to say, I created urgency in my wife's life that day that didn't need to be there during that time. I got there in time. Everything was fine. Our baby was born, and she did all the work, so it's pretty awesome. But we're going to dive in. I've got a quote that I want to share with you as we start. Charles Humble says, we live in the constant tension between the urgent and the important. I don't know about you, but I don't like living in tension. I don't like that feeling in my gut that gives. And as we talk about this, I think this life hack hits it perfect in the middle. It just brings us to a place of saying what is urgent and what is important, and how do I work my life to make sure that I'm diving into what is the important thing in my life. And so that's exactly what this life hack is. It's talking about time, important versus urgent. So one of the statements that I love is we must take time to determine what's important, or it will be determined for us in the urgent. We must take time to determine what's important, or it will be determined for us in the urgent. What things are important to you? What things are you diving into with your time? What things do you take time to make sure that you fit into your schedule? Listen, I love mountain biking. It's one of my favorite things to do. I love being in the mix of being in Rapid City and having opportunities to ride my bike. Listen, one of the things I know where urgent and important comes in, it's important for you to wear a bike helmet. You can ride without a helmet. And if you get to where you're going and get home and you don't crash, that's awesome. But the urgency is heightened if we go on a bike ride and we crash and we don't have our helmet on. But that's a choice that you have to make in the middle of that. But what I do know is that the urgent and important matter because time matters. The urgent and the important matter because time matters. Listen, one of the things I know is we can't live in both. It's impossible to live in the urgent and just only in the urgent, and it's impossible to live just in the important. We have to make a decision about how we're going to spend our time. Is it going to be focused on what is important, or is it going to be focused on other things? So one of my questions is, does what you do with your time matter? Does what you do with your time matter? So I think a question for us is how I'm spending my time reflecting what I want my time to say about me. Is what I'm spending my time reflecting what I want my time to say about me? If we took a poll and just said, hey, what does your time say? I have conversations all the time with people that share with me about, I wish I was doing something different with my time, or I wish I was making better choices with my time, or I wasted a bunch of time. And maybe you've had those conversations. You're like, oh, where did the time go? And things like that. What I do know is that maybe sometimes we don't always like what the reality of our time says about us, but it's important for us to at least ask that question and kind of wrestle with that for a little bit in the midst of our life. One of the things that I like spending my time on is coming up right around the corner, and it has to do with watching college football. I love college football. Go Hawkeyes. And maybe if you've watched college football, you've seen this on the sideline. You're like, what does that have to do with college football? If you watch college football, you know. But what I know is that Batman and Superman really don't ever have a place in college football. But this is a poster board that they put up on the sideline that helps the teams determine what play they're going to call or what defense they're going to call in the midst of the game. And you and I know that a game has a certain amount of time that they play. And so what they call in the middle of the game is important. This plays an important role in deciding what they're going to do with their time during the game. Just like for life, you and I have a certain amount of time. So if I asked you the question, what would be on your board today? I think we have a number of good options. If this was the board of your life and the game of your life, money, family, church, things, a boat, you could put a camper there, whatever you want to do. Maybe on the side are other things you like to do. You've got sports. Maybe you like to bike, or you like to game. Maybe you love going and watching your kids play sports or be active. And then you have work. And I don't know about you. I don't know what fits on your board right now. But what I do know is if you're going to put one of these other ones in there, that you're going to say this represents what's going on in life, you're going to have to take one off because only so many things can fit on your board. And the reality is, we only have so much time in our days because this will just make us go crazy if we're trying to cram and fit everything in there. And what our time says about us is important. So the question that I want to ask you is, are we using our time to focus on what matters most? Are we using our time to focus on what matters most? One of the things I'm challenged by in Jesus' life is that his life was represented by four things that I think that never changed. It was kingdom, it was people, it was prayer, and it was leading. And those things never changed throughout the course of Jesus' ministry. And that's challenging to me as I read his word and as I think about what the things that he did in the midst of his life that pointed people towards the kingdom, or the time he spent in prayer that challenged me. And one of those things that come out of his life and what matters most is a story out of John 4. And maybe you've read this story before, but we're going to read it together today. I'm looking forward to it. It says that he, being Jesus, had to go through Samaria on the way. Eventually, he came to the Samaritan village of Sychar, near the field that Jacob gave his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired from the long walk, sat wearily beside the well about noontime. Soon, a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Please give me a drink." He was alone, and at the time, because his disciples had gone into the village to buy some food. Maybe some of the things that you don't know about this passage of Scripture is that the first one is that Jews did not associate with Samaritans. Jews did a lot of hard work to go around Samaria and to not actually be found there. Jews and Samaritans didn't get along, but one of the things I find about what Jesus finds important in this passage of Scripture is that Jews didn't go through Samaria, but Jesus did. Jesus wasn't concerned about what people thought or what other people perceived about him. And another thing is, Jews didn't talk to Samaritans, let alone Jewish men talking to Samaritan women. But Jesus did. He put a priority on doing those things that needed to be done. If it went through his board of importance, that was how he was going to operate. Because what I find is pursuing the urgent focuses on pressures over people, while pursuing the important focuses on the people over pressures. Jesus definitely could have bowed to the pressure and the perception that he should not be having a conversation with the Samaritan woman by himself at a well at noontime. And listen, this fact wasn't lost on the Samaritan woman at the well either. She was probably just dumbstruck why this Jewish man was talking and wanting to have a conversation with her. It just didn't make sense. But something happened in this conversation that opened the door for them to get the heart of the issue that we're going to look at today. Because so many times when we focus on just the pressures, we miss, I think, the people around us. And if we just focus on people, sometimes I think we miss some of the details of some of those things that require our attention. And so, as we look at this today, I'm excited about what we're going to learn together. It wasn't just for a drink of water that he was there. It said that Jesus said, everyone who drinks this water will get thirsty again. And anyone who drinks the water I give them will never thirst, not ever. The water I give will be an artesian spring within, gushing fountains of endless life. That sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? Gushing fountains of endless life. The woman said, "Sir, give me this water so I won't ever get thirsty again. I won't ever have to come back to this well again." Can you hear her voice? Can you hear the tone of her voice? Like, give me what you've got. That sounds amazing. Something that I notice about this woman is that she was caught in the tension of urgent and important. Her life was filled and focused on urgency right now, because she came to the well in the middle of the day. Listen, nobody came to the well in the middle of the day unless they didn't want to be seen, unless they didn't want to be noticed. And she was missing out on the life that other people were living. And you can tell that about the tone in her voice. You can tell that about the reality of the way that she's speaking to Jesus. Like, listen, all that pressure is aside. You and I having a conversation right now. And the reality is, I want what you're talking about. And I think that's just powerful. And I think that is something that we have to take notice with in this conversation. So let's take a look. He said, "Go call your husband and then come back." "I have no husband," she said. "That's nicely put. I have no husband. You have had 5 husbands, and the man you are living with now isn't even your husband. You spoke truth there, sure enough." A couple things that I noticed. One, Jesus didn't get after her and say, "Listen, why are you here in the middle of the day? That's ridiculous. It's hot. What are you hiding? What's going on?" But Jesus doesn't beat around the bush either. He gets right to the point of it, saying, "This is essential. I know everything about you. What would you do?" Let's take a second here. What would you do if somebody shared this? You're like just having a conversation. They shared, "Hey, this is going on in your life. This is going on in your life. This is what's taking place." Would you be like, "Hey, cool, I'm glad you know that"? Or would your jaw drop to some degree and be like, "How did you know that that's going on in my life?" How would you wrestle with that truth being dropped in your lap? I don't know. But she didn't want to be defined by her trips to the well. She didn't want her life to be defined by that. And ultimately, her life was defined by what was going on here that Jesus shares. You've had 5 husbands, and the man you're with right now, he's not your husband either. And here's what I know, and here's what I believe, that her urgency is our urgency. I think so many times we wrestle with this idea of what's important, and if we get caught up in urgency like she gets caught up in urgency, we find ourselves doing things to avoid people or doing things to avoid circumstances and situations We do things that are out of our natural realm of what we would love our time to look like. And she had developed this lifestyle of going to the well in the middle of the day and missing out on the things that other people were doing, and it was difficult and it was frustrating for her. And it brought her to a place of trying to understand specifically, I don't know if I'll ever get out of this cycle. I don't know if I'll ever take a turn to get out of what's going on. If we're honest, her urgency is our urgency. But what I know is the urgent robs us of value, while the important helps us see with clarity. The urgent robs us of value. Man, when it comes to time, I don't like being robbed of time. I like doing my best to make the most of the time that's in front of me. And this really right here is, to me, a hinge point to what we're going to be talking about the rest of the time. Because if we want to spend our time being robbed of value, we'll focus on the wrong thing. We'll take time to focus and be involved in the urgent and not focus on the important. But I want us to see here, and I think it's vital, while the important helps us see with clarity. My hope is that after we get done today, you can begin to see with a new clarity. You can begin to see with the clarity that God has for your life and what he desires from you in this life hack. To see with clarity where it's important to be spending your time and what you're giving value to, what's on your board. And you're excited about that. And you're loving investing in that. And so as we walk through this, I want to continue with the story because it goes on. The woman took the hint and left. In her confusion, she left her water pot. Back in the village, she told the people, "Come and see a man who knew all about the things I did, who knows me inside and out. Do you think this could be the Messiah?" And they went out to see for themselves. Jesus suddenly brought clarity to her life. Clarity in a way that she probably hadn't had in a long, long time. She had been living in an urgent state, and Jesus broke through all that. He broke through those pressures to have the conversation to bring clarity to what was going on in her life and what was taking place. She runs into the village. Can we just take a quick side note here, just to show you the way my brain works? As she ran into the village and said, "Come and meet a man who told me everything about me or everything I know," do you think there were people in town that were like, "Yep, we already know everything that you're doing"? Or maybe when she went in and she got around a certain group of people and she was like, "Hey, there's a man that told me everything about me, and let me tell you." And some people were like, "Oh, please don't say that. You said you wouldn't say anything." But something had happened, and something was taking place and transforming her that she couldn't contain herself anymore. And she went into town and shared. And one of the things I know, and this is just another side note, is that she was not just known. It wasn't the fact that she was just known, but I believe it was because she was known and loved. Jesus told her the truth about her life. But it wasn't just truth. He didn't send her away and said, "Go and get out of here. I can't talk to you. There's no way I could be around you." But she was known and loved. And with this new clarity, she was able to share with freedom the things that were going on in her life. And she went into town, and people took notice that something was different, and they wanted to be a part of it. Because a woman that maybe they avoided, a woman that maybe they didn't want to have a conversation with or anything or talk about, they went to see for themselves. And I think that's huge. So many times in our life, pursuing what is urgent pulls us in many directions. Listen, none of us are that good. None of us are that good to be pulled in so many directions. When we're pulled in different directions, it makes us ineffective. It puts us in a place that we can't maintain that kind of pace. I don't know if you've had those moments in your life where you've been trying to maintain a pace that is just unbelievable, and you are exhausted, and everybody around you knows you're exhausted. And it's just crazy. Like, how can I continue this? How can I How can I make up more time to get the things done I want to get done? Because time and pressure it takes to maintain the urgency is costly. The time and pressure it takes to maintain urgency is costly because it does some things if we're under that kind of pressure. I believe that we lose influence with the people around us because we can't always be where we want to be at the times we want to be there. And slowly and surely our influence with the people in our lives, whether at work or whether at home, start to dwindle. One of the other things I believe that it causes us to lose perspective. It causes us to lose perspective on what's really important. We may have had an idea at one time about what we thought is important, but we allowed urgency to take control. And we allowed the pressure of urgency and pursuing what was urgent to lose perspective. But most importantly, I think that when we pursue what's urgent and we're pulled in different directions, we have the ability to lose character. And that is something that is really, really difficult to get back. We may have never intended to go there. We may never intended to go down that line. We always wanted what was on our board to be on our board. But when we made the decision and the choice to allow our time to be reflected of pursuing the urgent, it put us in a place to make decisions and choices that opens the door for us to possibly lose our character. But there's a flip side to that. Pursuing what's important pushes us to a single focus. Man, I love this statement because what I know about my life is that when I have a single focus, I'm better at what I do. When I can stick to the things that I have said are important in my life, and I put up those guardrails and those things that protect my time, protect my choices, and help me focus on the important, it's huge. That doesn't mean there won't be urgent things. That doesn't mean there won't be things in our lives that try to pull us away and try to bring our attention to somewhere else. But it just means we put them in the right perspective of saying, okay, this is not going to be regular, and we have checks and balances in our life that help us and have conversations of people telling us, hey, you've been working a lot lately, or you've been doing this a lot lately, or you have not been home, and I just want to encourage you, how do we switch that back? Because I think those are vital, as well as having being able to have those conversations. I think there's freedom there. So I'm making what's important because I'm focusing on the right things of time. So how do we get a single focus? I think one of the verses that challenges me comes out of Colossians 3:2. It says, look up and be alert to what is going on around Christ. That's where the action is. See things from his perspective. I love that, the reality of being alert. Of being alert and just finding ourselves in a place to seeing what's going on around us. But it's not just what's going on around us, because if we're going to follow this life hack out and we're going to grow in our relationship with Christ, I believe that our focus has to be at what's going on around Christ. His board didn't change. It's one of those things that draws us back in to give us perspective. And that's where the action is. And those are the things that I want to exemplify my life. Having a single focus, I believe, gives us a peace. It was exactly what the woman at the well needed, to have a single focus. It wasn't all the things she was trying to do to cover up the life, to put herself in the right place at the right time, to find herself not being noticed and to have that pressure. But when she had that single focus of being known, and she went in and she started telling people, listen, he told me everything he knows about me. That changed. That gave her a single focus. Would you be willing to take time to identify the important things in your life and give them a single focus? How do we do that? I love this verse. This verse right here in Psalm 90:12 is probably one of my favorite verses in all the Bible. I use it a number of times. Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Listen, we're only given a certain amount of time, a certain amount of days. And I remember when I finally made this verse just one of those things that was committed to memory and just a continual reminder of how I wanted to live my life in such a way. It's challenging to me. But it's not just challenging to me because I had a friend, and he and I had a conversation a while back, that he was looking at his calendar, and he was coming to a place of saying, listen, I looked at my calendar the other day, and I had everything I wanted on there, all my appointments, all my lunches, all the places I need to be and the times I needed to be there, but I didn't have God on my calendar. And so he goes, I got to fix that. And so he began daily putting God in his calendar. Does he get it right all the time? No, but man, it's working for him. It's challenging him to say, listen, I need this time on my calendar to make the right choices, to put time in perspective, to consistently examine my time to make sure it's lining up with what I say is important in my life. Because if we're not willing to do that, I think we're missing out on gaining a heart of wisdom. And I want to have a heart of wisdom when it comes to what God desires for my life. There's a quote by Tim Cooper. You will not passively find what you do not actively pursue. I just heard this quote just not long ago, and it was one of those quotes that was huge for me. Because I think, how many times in my life am I passive at what I want my life to represent? How many times am I passive in not being intentional with my time and allowing things to get in the way and allowing the urgent to creep in there? I need to be active. I want to be active when it comes to pursuing this life hack of time and being intentional with going after what's important. And I think there's some questions that we have to ask ourselves as Christians. Am I following after Jesus? Am I spending time in his word? Am I spending time serving? Am I spending time around other believers? Are what I say and what I'm doing matching up to a world around me, specifically the places I go? If I'm married, am I loving my spouse? Am I praying for her? Am I putting their needs above my own? Am I serving? Am I telling them I love them? Am I caring? If I go to work, do I have boundaries? Do I leave work there? Do I give my best while I'm at work? Can I say no when I'm at work? If I'm a parent, am I teaching my kids about loving Jesus? Am I taking time to listen to them? Am I showing them what it looks like to make time a priority and to make those things important? Do I say I'm sorry? Do I listen to them? I think those are important things. If you're a student, man, one of the things that I talk with my girls all the time about, am I being a good friend? Am I being a good listener? Am I doing my best? Am I being a light for Christ? And am I earning it? I think those are things that mark importance in our time. And then if you're a son or a daughter, man, are you praying for your mom and dad? Are you encouraging them? Are you being a part of the house? Are you encouraging your brothers and sisters and serving them and telling them you love them? As we walk through this, it would be easy for us to say, wow, man, that's a lot, but I want to encourage you today. As we dive into these life hacks, I hope you know that we want to share these with you because we love you and because we believe that you can do this. And these are things that we're walking through as well. I don't always get putting the important right where it needs to be, and I get caught up in urgent, and my time reflects that. But what I do know is as I walk this out, I see Jesus at work more and more in my life, and I want that. And I want that for you. And so I want to encourage you, believing that you can do this and you can take these steps to see God at work in your life. Let me pray with you. Dear God, thank you so much for this time, for right now as we've been talking about this life hack of time and the important versus the urgent. God, help us to understand, for me, what's on my board right now. And am I willing to bring it and give it clarity? Am I willing to be intentional about the things that are on there and give them the attention that they need? God, thank you for the story of the Samaritan woman And God, you breaking down the walls to have a conversation with her and for her to be willing to listen and to hear, because her life is a lot like our life as we wrestle with urgency and the distractions that brings and the tensions that brings in our life. Help us, challenge us, grow us. God, help us to see with clarity. Help us to number our days aright so we can gain a heart of wisdom, and help us desire to love and follow you as we live our life. Thank you, God, for loving us that much. And we ask this all in your awesome name. Amen.